the RYLACast. We have made it to episode 3.
Episode 3.
This feels like a monumental moment.
Yeah.
How many podcasts don't get 3 episodes? I bet there's a bunch.
There's a lot.
There's a lot that just flame out. This is the official podcast of Camp RYLA District 5810. I am Greg Tepper. Sitting to my right, you know him, you love him. He is the man that we all wish we could be.
Oh.
You know him as Josey. It's Andrew Retz. Hello, Josey.
Hello, Greg.
I want to keep coming up with new, loftier titles for you in every podcast.
I am actually speechless whenever you introduce me.
Yeah, you just, sure, dude, fine. Okay, so we are here in episode 3. We are going to go through our normal rigmarole. 3 segments to go. We'll have something to think about, someone to talk to, and then something to leave you with. Here, with something to think about, looking dapper as ever, ladies and gentlemen, it's Josey.
Well, thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
There's again the NPR voice.
Well, thank you, Greg. I just like the phrase, well, thank you. Go for it.
Something to think about. So, passion. That's it. That's what I want you to think about. Passion and how that relates to you, finding your passion. What I'm trying to, intro is grit. And that's a weird word for me to try to define. But I'm going to try. So I was listening, go figure, to a podcast, a Hidden Brain episode from April 4th, 2016, so a couple years ago. And I found it just by searching grit, because the title is Grit. It popped up on the news feed. And it really tries to define that word. And I know we introduced that to camp last year. And I've been thinking about it for, I guess the camp was in August, so what are we, 8 or 9 months or so?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
And so what that talks about and introduces is the idea of finding your passion and persevering at it. And it's a difficult thing to think about all the time. I'm an adult, as I said in an earlier episode, and I can't imagine trying to think about what I'm...
weird brag.
Yeah.
I'm an adult. Well, cool, man. No, I'm kidding.
But, finding your passion, that's a scary word, I know what I like to do, but I don't know if I'd call it my passion.
Right.
And
for example, what makes you money.
That's right.
It's like a perfect way to put it. It's like how many people have a job that's a job, you know what I mean, as opposed to a passion.
That's right. And so what I think grit is trying to get down to is when things get tough, do you still have your eye on the prize? Is your goal worth fighting for, fighting tooth and nail? And that's where perseverance comes in. And I know personally I've had aspirations and things that I've put off to the wayside because I just didn't make them a priority. Mm-hmm. And something else, a shiny quarter, came along, and I decided to chase that over what I really valued, which really ended up being not what I valued. And so this idea of grit is when times get tough, and I'm not talking about, it could be times get literally tough in terms of just things don't go your way, or from a daily perspective of if you've missed that deadline, or if somebody's thrown a wrench in your personal plans, what are you going to do about it? And also, when is it okay to quit? And I know quit isn't a fun word.
It's a 4-letter word, man.
It is a 4-letter word. Another 4-letter word I don't like is can't. But at the same time, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I think it's very important to know when it's okay to walk away. And as a leader, it's really tough to try to define that line. And I don't have all the answers. But that's why this is called Something to Think About.
Yeah, something like you were talking about that, and something that like sprung to mind for me is like, all right, this is going to take a weird turn, but like you pick up a book, right, and you start reading, and like let's say it's a 500-page book, and after 100 pages you're like, boy, I don't know if I'm into this, I don't know if I like this. It's like there's something to be said for pushing through. But at the same time, right? Like, there's also that question of like, do I cut bait?
Exactly.
And do I go find a book I think I will like better? And that's an odd balance to strike, you know. And that's, you know, we're using a book as an analogy, but it's like that's kind of almost anything in life. Something like things are going to get challenging. Is it worth it to push through that? I don't know. That's something that's super interesting to think about.
Yeah. So I know I could ramble on, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Something to think about, and that I'll leave you with this. Just find, don't be afraid to throw in the towel if it's something you're not passionate about or you don't want to see through. There's no harm in what others think about what you are doing.
Golly, is that not the truth? Holy cow.
Yeah.
That is so true. It's like, are you doing something for you or are you doing something for someone else? And I feel like I can point to like 3 or 4 things. And look, that's not to say, for example, like there are things that I do. I load the dishwasher, okay? I don't load the dishwasher because I'm passionate about loading the dishwasher. I load the dishwasher because it's going to get our dishes clean, and more importantly, my wife's going to like it.
Right, most importantly.
Right, I'm doing it for her. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is, like, are you doing something in your life that is fundamentally for somebody else as opposed to for you? And I'm not talking about like charity. I'm talking about like pursuing something because you think that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yes,
you know?
That's an excellent way to put that.
I don't know. That's super interesting. Man, you've got me thinking in this segment called Something to Think About. Well done.
Well, thank you.
You did it. You've accomplished the mission statement of the first segment.
Well, that's good. And I would end the podcast here because we've accomplished it, but we actually have
check. Nope, we're done.
Nope. We actually have our second segment where we learn about someone. And this, in episode 3, we have a very special guest. Mm-hmm. I would like to welcome to the room. Put your hands together for the one, the only, Greg Tepper.
Boo. Boo!
No. Welcome, Greg.
It's. I've been here the whole time.
Oh, okay. Well,
the match. Radio is supposed to be like theater of the mind, and I'm just like coming in and just like throwing a torch onto the stage.
Well, now that you've
happy to be here.
Why don't you start by telling us your RYLA story?
Yeah, so I have a weirdo RYLA story. So I was a camper. I am extremely old. Extremely old. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, what year did you go to camp?
I'm asking for an AARP card for my next birthday. I went to camp back in 2003. As I said, I'm ancient.
Okay, but you're post-2000. So.
I went to camp in 2003, and then got a ton out of it. I think it was there's some people that go to camp and it doesn't click with them, and that doesn't make them good, bad, or indifferent. It just is. There's some people it doesn't click with. It clicked immediately with me. Like, I was like, there are so many things I learned that make sense. There are so many things that I felt passionate about. There were so many things that I was excited about, and I wanted to stay involved, and so I applied and got accepted to the advisory group, and eventually I was an AC in 2004. I was in a cabin in AC. And then I kind of ghosted for like, let me check my watch here, 13 years.
Okay.
Yeah, life in a lot of ways got in the way. Part of it is that I went to school out of state. I went to school at the University of Missouri, and studied something or other. And so I was out. Like, I was just, it was something I did when I was there, and I would think about every once in a while, but like overall, like, it was just, it kind of fell into that category of other things I did when I was younger. You know what I mean?
Right.
I went to camp these 2 years. Cool. Check. Moving on. Literally, this is 100% true. I ran into a RYLA friend at a Rangers game. It was like a July Rangers game. Nobody there because they were bad, and it was also hot. And like, it was my wife and I, and then it was one of the RYLA staffer, like one of my friends from RYLA, and we were like the only. And I think she might have been there with somebody, but we were like the only 4 people in the section. Okay,
So it's hard to hide.
She
from
was
that.
sitting like 2 rows in front of me, and I kept kind of looking at her. I was like, I think I know who that is. And sure enough, she was leaving, and she was like, Greg, and I was like, hey. We started talking, and we started talking. I just kind of wrote to her on Facebook, like, oh my gosh, it's so great to see you, and stuff like that. I'm so glad you get to meet my wife and all this fun stuff. And she just kind of said, eventually she kind of, I guess I can call her, it was Carolyn Mathis. She just kind of like got her hooks in me like a big jerk and like very slowly like reeled me in because she like asked me to come and speak at her Rotary Club. And then she said, hey, why don't you come out to camp for a couple days and stuff like that. And then like if you're ever away from camp and then you come back to camp for a couple days, it's just like it's such a jarring experience. It's so different from that perspective that like it all comes flooding back to you like, oh my god. And then like there were a lot of not to ramble on too long, but now I'm kind of helping back with the RYLA program. We're doing this podcast, and I'm involved. I was an assistant camp director last year, and just kind of involved in a way that I wasn't before. All kind of because of a random meeting when the Rangers probably lost to like the Rays, like 8-1.
So your love of sports intersected your love of leadership.
Exactly.
Well, and you said something interesting that Carolyn kind of reeled you in slowly,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also threw in that you were assistant camp director last year. So things, once you were back in the fold, things escalated quickly.
Yeah, they did. They did, and I think it's because they didn't have anybody else. No, I'm kidding. But no, it was. It did. It was an interesting kind of escalation and a way to jump back in whole hog. And I think I needed that. Like, speaking from my perspective, I think I needed that. I needed to feel like I was helping and I wasn't just along for the ride. Like, this wasn't just like a nostalgia trip.
Right.
Like, that I was actually helping. And so it was really powerful. And so 2018 was the first time I was back at camp for the entire week since 2004. I went 14 years between it. And I really, really hope that I can be an inspiration to people in the sense that if you're away from the program for now, that doesn't mean you have to stay away. And there were a lot of emotions that I had to work through, one of which was when you come back to camp and you remember and you start looking at who you are now, and you start drawing straight lines between things that you learned there and what you're doing now, and you realize the impact that program had on you. There's a lot of guilt. I'll be honest. There was a significant amount of guilt that, like, here this program gave me so much, and I abandoned it for 13 years. I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
You're going to say, like, oh, you shouldn't feel like that, Craig.
I'm going to say it's a two-way street. But we don't have to get into that here.
It's just, I don't know. That was, I'm being honest, like, that was something I had to get over,
right.
Like, personally. Is I had to say, you know what? I feel, I don't like that I left this program in lurch when I could have been helping. But I'm here now. I only have agency over myself at this moment. Why don't I go and make it right? And so, yeah, that's probably more deeper than you were looking for.
No, that's actually perfect. And welcome back. We are very appreciative to have you on board.
Happy to be back.
But why don't you tell us what you're doing now?
I am my wife and my infant son let me live in their house, and I am a vagrant.
I am rent-free.
Yes, rent-free. No, I am the managing editor of a football magazine, Dave Campbell's Text Football. I went to Missouri to study journalism, and then I do some television work on Fox Sports Southwest as part of their high school football and college football coverage. So I'm in the media. I'm a newsman.
A newsman. So
I've never described myself as a newsman until right now.
So you said you could draw, straight lines to what you learned at camp. So I know we could be here for many more episodes describing that. But why don't you pick the top one or two things that you use today?
90% of my job is just communicating with people, whether it is that I'm writing something or whether it's recording a podcast or whether it's doing television. It's communicating with people and communicating effectively and communicating in a way that is going to be respectful of people, but also gets your point across. And that is one thing that the communication skills that I got there, I think are paramount to my success, quote unquote success. The other thing that I would say is that I am in a management role. I'm the managing editor of a magazine, and as a result, there's a lot. So we put out if you're unfamiliar with the magazine, it's a 400-page annual that comes out in the summer. Previews every high school football team, college football team, pro team, recruiting. It's a smorgasbord of stuff, and the only way you get that done is by delegating and by planning and by having a plan. Have you ever heard the phrase or the question, how do you eat an elephant?
I will, but how do you eat an elephant?
One bite at a time. And so that is something that I took from RYLA is the ability to delegate and the ability to not get overwhelmed by the big picture, knowing full well that you can only do one thing at a time. And that was something that has always stuck with me from camp.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Am I off the hot seat?
Not yet.
Oh, dang.
We have two more. I'll give you
God. This is terrible. This is how people feel when I ask them questions?
Yeah.
Oh! I'd like to apologize to the countless high school football coaches that I've interviewed. God.
What are you most passionate about now that you're back with the organization?
One thing that I'm really passionate about is I think that it's not. I think it's a natural inclination to come back to camp and say, I want to help the campers, and I think that we all want to help the campers. We're all there for the campers, but I also think one thing I'm trying to be a little bit more cognizant of and a little bit more passionate about is helping the staff grow. Is helping helping them become better leaders, which are ultimately that's going to trickle down. That's more sustainable. That if you can go and it's the buy a man a fish, teach a man a fish, right? If I can go and I can impact one camper, that's great. If I can go and I can impact one counselor, that can then go impact 20 campers. That's So I'm passionate about that and trying to help out the staff as much as I can. As an assistant camp director last year, that was a great role for me in that regard, because I think that I got an opportunity to I didn't interact a ton with the campers. I was there and I wasn't like staying away from them, but it was the kind of thing where I was much more staff oriented. And that, to me, was really rewarding as far as helping the staff do their job. And if I do my job to help them do their job, then in a lot of ways, I'm helping to impact the entire camp. And that's something that I've been passionate about lately.
Well, and I can honestly say I can't count the number of people that have come up to me, not to me specifically, but have been in the area saying, I'm so glad Greg Tepper is back in the fold. And that's whether they've been at camp for 25, 30 years or 2 or 3 years. So,
well, that's kind.
Well, thank you.
Those are kind lies.
It's a testament to you and just jumping back right back in.
Well, and that's again. I hope I am a cautionary tale that is also an inspiration to people. That if you're hearing this and you haven't been back to camp in 6, 7, 8, 10, 15 years, we haven't forgot about you. And the organization can still use you. And so I hope that can help to inspire other people to not stay away due to guilt like maybe I would have if I hadn't been just prodded into getting back into it. So there's that.
There's that. Well, something we started last episode.
Oh, God.
What is one thing you would like to leave with our listeners?
This is interesting. I can do a lot of stuff here. I have a podcast, Texas Football Today, if you want to listen to that. There's that. Or I'm going to recommend a book because I like books. I'm a big reader. I like to read.
Oh.
Not to brag, but I am literate. There's a book by this is going to take a weird turn. There's a book by a gentleman named Skip Hollandsworth. Skip Hollandsworth writes for Texas Monthly. I think Skip Hollandsworth might be the best writer in America right now. I love his work. Everything he writes for Texas Monthly is amazing. If you've ever seen the movie Bernie, which is stars Jack Black, it's set in East Texas. It's based on a true story that was written by Skip Hollandsworth. It's amazing. Anyway, he wrote a book in 2016. It is called The Midnight Assassin, Panic, Scandal, and the Hunt for America's First Serial Killer. It is a book about 1800s Austin. And in the late 1800s, Austin was growing and expanding and getting big. And there was this thought of like, oh my gosh, Austin's going to be like, it's going to be the new New York. And then like the first serial killer ever struck in Austin.
Oh, wow.
Like at least in America, the first serial killer. And people like and they still don't know who it is. By the way, spoiler alert. I just read the book.
Yeah, now I don't have to read.
But it is a remarkable read, and it's really, really good. There are theories out there that it's actually Jack the Ripper, that he came over from England to Austin and started up again. So it's called The Midnight Assassin. It's by Skip Hollandsworth. I adored this book. It was so good. So go and read that.
Well, thank you.
There's my recommendation.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for your time and telling us your RYLA story.
There we go. Okay. So now I've got to wrap it all up, right?
That's correct. Something to leave you with.
Something to leave you with. There's a few different places that I could go. But I think that where I will go... So one of the things that I've been involved in is with RYLA is the advisory group, which are the maybe you're listening, Shout Out Advisory. They are the group of campers in 2018 who are working towards perhaps coming back as ACs in 2019, but are helping to improve the program because they are very close to the program. They just went through it. And that's been very rewarding for me. Excuse me. And one of the things that I think is really, really great, really interesting, is we kind of asked them off the top. We said, okay, what are the things that you that stood out to you? What are the things that you think about? What are the things that are impactful for you? And it's so funny, the little things that you hear that, for example, there were obviously some people who said, well, Troy's outstanding presentation stuck with them. There's that. But then there's also little things. Like, for example, the first day, Scooter Ward gets up and he speaks, and he had one quote, and we heard this more than any other group, was they said, the thing that stuck with me was, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the quote. It was a really good quote. It's like, the you that you are is better than the you that anybody wants you to be. Right?
That is
a great quote. It's a great quote. Yeah, I'm sure he stole it from somewhere. Shout out to you, Scooter. No, I'm kidding. But no, it's a great, great quote. And it's so funny because I've now heard Scooter speak 3-4 times. I'm sure you've heard him speak 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 times. That's something he's passionate about, something he believes in, and I believe in too. It's a great quote. It's a great thing to say. But it's something that I think kind of soars past me sometimes. But hearing these kids talk about it it tells you about the the pressure that they're under to be something. And I've long thought that RYLA is, in a lot of ways, the reason it's so powerful is that because you have a bunch of campers coming together who are all wired similarly, and they all have kind of this through line of expectation, and they're achievers, right? They're achievers, but achievers can be high strung sometimes,
Right?
And I think that's something that stuck with me is just that permission structure to say, hey, it's okay to just be you. Like, it's easy for us to say, hey, be yourself. You know what I mean?
Right.
But to hear somebody say, hey, it is okay for you to be yourself is very powerful. And I think about that quote a lot because, in my line of work, I think that it can be easy to be a little bit artificial. And so I try to think about that a lot. And so that's something that I will leave you with.
Well, that's a great message.
Thanks, man.
And thank you for being here, not only as a co-host of the podcast, but also telling us your RYLA story.
And I thought you were going to say, like, thank you for being here because the pizza guy's coming. We need you to pay.
Well, that as well.
Okay, good. Well, there you go. That is episode 3 of the RYLAcast. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. If you like this podcast, please go subscribe and leave a rating. RYLA5810alumni.org is where you can find all things Camp RYLA. And I guess we'll probably keep doing this podcast because you guys seem to like it. So, Josey, thank you for your courage.
Thank you, Greg.
And we will see you next time on the RYLAcast.